So again, thank you all for joining. It's right at the top of the hour, and we look forward to our March technical Zoom meeting. We've been doing this now for I think 4.5 years, and we do have a special guest tonight. We're very excited about it. Alan Hendrix from Hendrix Wire Wheels is going to be our special guest. Alan, I believe, was one of our first special guests. I believe it was probably 4 years ago. Alan, you joined us back then.
Yeah, I think it was.
And so you'll notice that Alan has a distinct accent, different than we New Englanders. So he's from North Carolina. We look forward to that. So Alan, I'm going to share my screen. I realize you're on the phone, which is great. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show your website so people get a perspective of that. But we'll there it is. Okay. Can everyone see my screen with Alan's website?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how this all again originated is I was my BJ8, which I bought from another club member back I guess it was 9 years ago. Had the wheels and tires all look good, but I'd been fighting Healey scuttle shake, and we had balanced the brake drums, and I had the wheels and tires. They were used, but I had them shaved by Ken Beck a number of years ago, and it made it better, but it wasn't ideal. So I made the decision when I looked at my tires. The manufacturing date was 1996. So I decided it was about time. Everything looked good; they looked fine, but 26-year-old tires isn't really the right thing to do. And again, if you're not speaking, if you wouldn't mind, put your phone on mute. That would be great. So I made the decision to get new wheels and tires, and called up my friend Alan, and he had them all set up for me, and it shipped them up UPS to me, and I mounted up on my BJ8, and what a difference. It's just amazing the difference. I can buzz down the highway now 65, 70, 75 miles an hour with not a bit of shaking at all. So so for that, Alan, why don't we turn it over to you, and why don't you just give a little update about your business, and we'll talk tires. We do have 3 different questions about tires and wheels, so we'll get a chance to talk about that, Alan.
All righty. Well, I've been doing this here in this location for 23 years. I started doing this in the mid-'70s when I got my first BJ8 in '72, my first Healey. And, of course, I was young and didn't have much money. So there was in every town there was a British Leyland dealership, and then there was always that service station that worked on the SCCA British sports cars. And that was where I would go. It was a Texaco station owned by a guy named Ellis Roach, and get to learn about it and work on the cars. And he did the old wheelwright way back then of shaving the tires and truing the wheels and using the right tubes and prepping everything right, getting them perfectly straight and round, had the right old equipment, and would do that. And he made me a deal one day because he was getting old and he was tired of this. He said, I'll make you a deal. He said, if you work on Saturdays and come in, I'll teach you how to true wheels, how to get them all perfect. And when you do these, you won't have to worry about paying for parts or borrowing my tools, and I'll teach you how to fix your Healey. Well, a young man in his 20s, that was heaven, because I had a back. So I did that just to pay off my debt to keep my old BJ8 going for many, many years, and it just stayed a hobby. So over the many years of my other businesses and life, when I would find this old equipment, I would buy it, I would refurbish it, and I just had this on my own to do. And then when I retired in the late 90s, people kept coming to bother me at home, and I finally just got a little shop, and my buddy Jerry, who's retired from here now too, he was my buddy and worked on Healeys together in my neighborhood. And he said, I'm going to hang up my shingles for he was a pharmacist for 50 years. He said, why don't we open a business, do what we love, do what we know how to do perfectly, go to car shows and write it off and enjoy doing our hobby. And I went, sounds like a plan. So that's how it came about.
Great. Well, thank you for that, Alan. And so here's one of our first questions is, now this gentleman, his tires aren't quite as old as mine were, but His tires are 10 years old, but they only have about 1,000 miles on them. Are they safe? And should I be afraid of dry rot? So that comes from Ken Gibson.
Yeah, well, Ken, I would still be afraid of dry rot because of 10 years. You know,
Okay.
some websites, if you go to Michelin North America, they put it on their website 6 years. But of course, your car is not getting the mileage, not being out in the sun, not stored. But according to the government, 10 years is max because the tire is a petroleum byproduct, has oils in it. And what happens is when they evaporate, you lose the adhesion between the steel belts and the rubber because it starts getting brittle. So it may look great on the outside, may not even be cracking, but the adhesion part of that may let that belt go and it could come off. If you ever notice going down the highway, you go by these alligators, we call them, sitting in the road with a perfect tread on it where it came off of something and went, there's a lot of tread on that. So 10 years, I say, is max, and I'm going 10 years because of how we drive these cars and how they're stored. But I wouldn't go, if you're going to be putzing around town, you may go another year or so, but if you're going to make a road trip, make sure you got good fresh rubber and good fresh rubber on a spare. And I wouldn't go any longer than that.
Okay, they are Michelin's.
Yeah, and Michelin says 6 years because they don't want to be sued.
Okay, I guess I'll be getting in touch with you for tires sometime in the spring.
Yeah, it's always the safest way. I tell all my customers, just remember the only thing going to get your butt killed is if your wheels and tires come apart or your brakes fail. Everything else you can just wait on the side of the road for AAA and Bubba in the tow truck. But those items, they're going to get you hurt.
I don't know if you ever ran into Ray Dinkle. He lives in North Carolina. Ray and Carla went with us for the trip to Europe, and after he came back, he was driving with Carla in the car, and the right rear tires separated. It was only about 8 years old. It separated. It tore out his rear fender completely, and luckily Carla had her hand inside the car. Had her hand been outside of the car, should have lost her arm. So, the answer is you don't need to pay to spread the extra time for those tires. Get good ones.
Yeah, this happened to Don Lynchchow and Kay coming from Texas to here, and he had bought 2 years ago what he thought off the shelf was some new Michelin tires for his Jensen. And the same thing, she had her arm, elbow out the window and just pulled it in, and the back tire delaminated, and it beat like a whip down the side of that Jensen. And when he got done and got it towed over to our shop, we looked at the date code. Those tires have been sitting on a new a shelf before it got sold to him, and were 11 years old.
Wow.
But they were new looking, but hadn't sold.
Yeah.
So it's like, read the date code.
Absolutely. We don't drive on tires older than 5 years. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, it's not worth your life. So that's why I say don't go past 10. And if it's 8, you're planning to go, man, I'm going out to Conclave. I'm going to go to California or somewhere. I'm going to go to the Roundup in Texas. Take a look. It ain't worth it. Put some good rubber on.
You brought up an interesting thing. How do we read the date code and interpret it?
If my website is up, you can go to the tech tip page. It says how to read tire date codes. I'll tell you though, they put it on where they stamp the DOT. It's only on one side. So one side you will see DOT and some numbers, and the other side you will see DOT, and then the very last 4 numbers that are not on the other side where they put the DOT number will be the week and the year. In other words, if it's 09 of 3, that actually will be the 9th week of 93 because it's 3 digits. If it's in this century, it would say 09 of 13. And you'd go, okay, that's 9th week of 2013.
Okay.
And I do have, Alan, I do have your website up, and I am on that tech page for reading those.
Yeah, and that's a law and has been since the mid 80s to put it on one side so you know what age those tires are when you buy them.
Super, thank you.
So another question came up regarding tires is when I change tires, is there anything I should do to check on the wire wheels? What is the best way to balance tires in wire wheels? That comes from Ed Ellers.
Well, when you're changing tires, one, you want to make sure that you've got a good rim band. Everything's clean inside. There's no labels left inside. The new tire will probably have a label on the inside. You want to scrape that out because those little labels can ball up and be like a little rock in there and puncture an inner tube if you're running one. So you want to vacuum all that out, get all of the labels off. Nowadays, you run rim tape, this breathable PVC tape, instead of the old rim band days, because they discovered that the rubber didn't breathe and held condensation against the nipples on the inside, and it would make them prematurely rust. So now it's breathable pipe wrap tape for burying pipes, and it lets it wick out. So you want to prep those, and used to be you could go get talcum powder at the dollar store. Well, that's not going to happen anymore. So tire talc, if you're using a tube, is important to get some, put it on the inside of the tire, bounce it around, because all tires are made tubeless, but you need to prep it for a tube. And by putting the talcum powder inside and bouncing it around, and don't leave a heavy load in there, it lets the tube, if you're using one, slip into position and doesn't let it vulcanize to the inside of the tubeless tire. And you can run tubes just fine. So getting those on correctly first is the most important thing. And if it's got a big valve stem hole, you want to use a valve stem grommet. There used to be ones they called TR15, which was like the size of your thumb valve stem. Well, those aren't around anymore, except specialty. So they have a TR13, which is like your little finger. But if you have a big hole, then that thing the tube can slide around and start cutting that valve stem. So there's a grommet that you can put in there, made just for that, to keep it centered. And then after that, when you're trying to balance these, you just can't throw it up with a cone front and back. You know, most of them, if you ever see the instructions, they tell you, no, you'll get a false reading. What we use here is actual hubs and knockoffs from the cars machined to fit our balancer and our truing machine, so we know we reproduced it exactly as it is on your car. So whatever we're doing here, when you put it on your hubs on your car, it's going to be identical. There is a kit that you can buy from Motor Wheel Service in England. I think it's like $400 and some that will adapt to different balancers. A lot of people going, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm probably only going to get one more set of tires in my life out of this anyway. But if you use just the cones front and back, you probably get a false reading. It may be the backing plate on the balancer is going to be on the back of the hub, which will make it look wobbly, and it's not. So your best bet is, if you can make an adapter by using a hub and a cone that fits it in the back, and have a machine shop cut a hole out dead center that would fit the spline for the balancer, and a machine shop would have to do it to be right. And you will be mounted just like on the car, and it'll give you correct balance.
I assume you don't recommend the old-fashioned bubble balancer.
You are actually better off with a bubble bouncer than letting the illegal alien at the Exxon store try to do it with two cones. I guarantee you.
Really?
You'll be a lot closer.
I got to ask, that's amazing, because that's what I did with my car. I had an extra hub. I didn't like it. I cut off the spokes they cut off the anyway. I used the cone from a wheel from the splines from the brake thing. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I put that on the bubble balancer, and I did a bubble balance, and I said, oh, boy, I really got this close. Can it really be that good? And I put it on the car, and it wasn't too bad. but I'm just maybe I'm too much of a perfectionist. But boy, that I'm amazed that you would say that a bubble balancer would do as well as the spin things, especially if the spin thing's done by somebody who's just just spinning them.
Yeah, you really are. You'll be closer. You'll be closer than spinning it with it being not mounted right, and then you're trying to counterbalance a mistake, and you're putting on tons of weights. I mean, we get them in here from people that you just see 4 or 5 weights slammed around the inside and outside of that rim, and you go, well, somebody don't know what the hell they're doing here. Once we straighten it out and get it all trued up and put it up, it's like they get it back going, I don't understand. I had 4.5 ounces on the front. It came back with a 1/2 ounce. This can't be right. I said, put them on the car, drive it, call me. And they went, it's perfect. I went, yeah, that idiot didn't know what they were doing. They just kept hammering on weights.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now you've given me a little bit more confidence. I'm going to continue. I'm using a Harbor Freight, balancer. I hope that's good enough. But it's a bubble balancer is a bubble balancer.
That's right. Bubble balance is a bubble balance, and you are closer.
Great. Well, thank you. And so Skip had the third question there. So I'm going to put Steve on mute there. So does anyone else have any tire or wheels questions?
Well, wait a minute. I did have a question, but my question was slightly different.
Okay, go ahead.
My question had to do with the utility of these liquid balancer things. We drive a motorhome, and they say if you put, it's a truck. So if you put, a lot of truck drivers put these little sand, little glass beads inside the tires. Well, they're saying don't do the glass beads because they clog the valves. But then they said use this liquid. How does that work? What do you think of the liquid?
On the liquid, anytime you ever have to change it, you ain't gonna believe the mess you've got. Because I've had those where they've done that, and they've come in here and we open it up, and it's like, you do realize it took us 4 hours of labor to clean that out and clean it off your rims and your tires to be able to do it right with the correct thick, right-fitting, heavy-duty tube and talcum powder. It makes a hell of a mess.
Well, I guess I'm in for it.
It does work on tractor trailers. I mean, when you're dealing something with that big a wheel, I'd be trying anything other than trying to get a tube into that sucker, or even trying to blow them up. But it does work on the bigger, but on the smaller, it doesn't. Plus, I've seen those that sit all winter. It coagulates. And when they first take off, it's all like in one lump sitting at the bottom all winter in Wisconsin. And they're like, I can't get over 40 miles an hour. It's jumping up and down. Yeah, well, it'll have to heat up. It's not going to heat up here till August. So I'd say, no, don't do that. Plus, those beads do break down to a fine sand, and they do clog the valve stems.
Yeah, I'm aware of the problem with the beads, but the liquid is actually an antifreeze liquid. It's literally antifreeze, and the idea is to keep it from icing up in Wisconsin. So when you drive it off on the ground, you don't. But I can understand the mess, and I guess I'm not looking forward to taking my tires off now.
Well, if you ever remember how many times we spilled antifreeze on the garage floor? And no matter how much you mop, there's still a film. That's what we have to try to get off. Is like, we can't have a film here and put rim band tape on it. It won't stick.
Yeah. Well, that is fantastic advice. You really helped a lot. Thank you very much, Alan.
You're welcome.
Great. So I see we've got a number of other folks on the call. Anyone else have questions regarding wheels or tires or any other thoughts?
I'd like to ask about the rear brake drums on the Healeys. I've heard that's problematic. I read about it in the Healey Mark about a year ago. And any advice on that? I guess they're cast out of round on the inner hub. And I noticed you say you do balancing on the rear drums also.
Yes, and Pete, if you will find that tech tip about balancing brake drums and bring it up for them, it shows
Okay.
a picture of how to tell if yours are probably out by looking at the drum on the inside. So what happened was, if you remember, before brake drums were, before we had front disc brakes, all the drums on the 4-drum brake cars were smooth on the outside. So they had a jig at Mowag that when they put them in to machine them for the axle on the inside, they were always centered. So we didn't have as much problem then. When they changed to disc brakes, they changed to the rib drums that you have on everything from 60 to 67 for cooling fins. But those castings with the ribs on the outside were not concentric. It was more like some slag. So every time they threw one upside down, which I got this straight from a retired Mowag guy at a show, good gosh, the California or Nevada, oh, wait a minute, it was Lake Tahoe. When Norman Knock was alive, we were doing a tech session. There's a guy from Mowag. He said every time we put them in the jig, they were off center. So we realized we were going to have to spend a lot of time finding center before we machined for that thing to go on to the axle when you put it on. And they went to Donald and told him what it would cost. He said, just throw them on there. I don't care. So they never did. So found out that if you flip them upside down and look at it, you can look at the wall where it's been machined on the inside. And if there's a thin side on one side and a thick side at the top of the other side, that thing's off center and it's out of balance and it's going to bounce. So we counterbalance that. And then I have a video and sheets on how to run out your hubs too, because those 5 lugs, when you put them on, each stage is a little bit off. So you want to get that centered. And I have tech tips on that too, how to center your hubs with a dial indicator. And I found this out by accident, probably in the 80s, cold, snowing, you're bored, you're in the garage, you got it on jack stands, and I'm looking in the mirror, and the car's running, and I see my left rear hub with no wheel on it, and I can see it going up and down, up and down, up and down. And I went, that's not supposed to do that. My own car, as good as I've gotten at this, I always had a shake when I passed 70. And I knew my wheels and tires are perfect, scratching my head. So I got out and I did a dial indicator and I started playing with this and talking with some other people, found out they were out of balance, learned how to balance it myself and centered the hub. Finally, after 15, 16 years, I drove it and had no shake at any speed. I went, well, I'll be a son of a gun. So I started getting club members local going, let me balance your drums. It won't cost you nothing. I got to figure out how to do this right. So that's how it came about. It does make a difference. What you will realize is wheels and tires being out, they hit their harmonic between 50 and 65. In that range is when you start getting a scuttle shake. When you get up to 70, you think it goes away, but it's going so fast from the wheels and tires that it's vibrating a lot faster, beating your bearings all to pieces, but a lot faster. But you will start feeling in your butt a different vibration, and that usually comes from brake drums and is shaking the back of the car. So the faster you go, the more inboard out of balance. If you've got it fine and you don't feel anything till you're up there around 3,500 RPMs, and then you feel the whole car shaking, go to your drive shaft. You probably got an out of balance problem or a universal joint. So the faster you go, the more inboard the out of balance will show up. That answer it?
Yeah. I turn my drums over and they look just like your picture.
And most of them did.
Yeah.
Most of them did.
Yeah. Now I went and balanced them on a bubble balancer I have, and they were 3 ounces, a little over 3 ounces off. But my rear drums had a ridge around the top edge that made it really convenient to just grind off to get them in balance. And it looked like the factory to try to do that. And that worked out pretty good for me. But I don't think any of the 6 cylinders after that had that convenient ridge that I had from what I saw on the web. So you must have the trick for it. That's very interesting. Thank you.
Well, if we do have some kind of a ridge, but one of the things is if we're dealing with a half ounce or less we will grind down to
Okay.
counterbalance. But if it's more than that, I don't want to be cutting into my drums too much.
Okay.
So anything after that is where we actually drill and tap and put weight on the drum and encapsulate it in 500-degree JB weld, and then it's good to go once it cures up.
Yeah.
We've had them come in where they were like 8 ounces, and it's like, dude, I ain't putting that much weight on anything. We got to find a different drum. And the new ones, you can't get the rib. The new ones are all smooth, which you would think that would cure the problem. Nay, nay.
Yeah.
Because I've had people who bought new drums and they said, you balanced my old drums. It ran great. I got some new drums. I put it on. I have a shake. I'll send them to you. Just tell me. And they were brand new. We put them up. They're like 2.25 on one, like 3.5 on the other. I went, these are brand new, smooth drums, because the rib drums don't exist. So I was going, yeah, you just don't know. It depends on the quality of workmanship nowadays.
Thank you very much.
Peter, did he?
Please. Hi, Alan.
Hi, it's Alan.
Yeah.
Alan, this is Alan.
Hey,
Yeah,
Alan.
how are you doing? I might have missed this. Was there a preferred place to find tires? I have a Sprite actually, but for this type of car, or?
Yeah, with a Sprite, you're getting where it's getting hard to find your the 13 inchers
Yeah.
that you're dealing with. And one that is still available at Tire Rack is a 155/8013 Kumo Solus. It's an excellent tire. It's the only one in that size, and I put it on Spits, GT6s, Sprites, and it's an excellent tire. After that, they've moved those tire size into trailer tires, which is horrible to drive on. So at TireRack.com, you can still get the Kumo Solus 155/8013s for the car.
And you won't get
They're
any
not
mileage
expensive.
out of it. You won't get any mileage out of a trailer tire either.
No, our grip.
Yeah, that's
So
a good point.
it's getting harder and harder to find that size, but that is the one that I recommend and is available. We put them on a lot, and they're very, very happy with them.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's what I
And it
have
won't
on
break the
my,
bank.
yeah, that's what I have on my Sprites. And they're quite reasonable.
Yeah, I think with shipping and everything, it's under $80. So
Right.
that's not bad. Of course, that's
Yep.
today. We are not talking about next week.
Yeah, well, I did see something. I think Coker a couple weeks ago sent out an announcement they were increasing all their tire prices and whatnot stuff. So is that what you're seeing, Alan? Prices are really going
Yeah,
up?
oh yeah, everything's going to go up for shipping and all. When I do
Right.
quotes for wheel and tire packages, I said this quote is good for 1 week on shipping because it goes up every day. And I said, so I can't hold a quote for shipping, but for 1 week tops.
Right. Okay. Any other wheel and tire questions?
Yeah,
No, I-
Peter, Dave Maley speaking.
Hi, Dave.
How are you?
Good.
Quick question. When one chews up a wire wheel, what is the procedure there?
The procedure itself is you get it on exactly like I said, where we have hubs and knockoffs that make it right. And depending on the wheel, if it's a new wheel, we true every new wheel. Let's just start with a new wheel. New wheel, it hadn't had a road rash or hit a curb, so there's not a dent anywhere. So on a new wheel itself, we still go by and check every spoke and bring it up to tension, because no matter who makes the wheel, it's done on assembly line. So we know that it could be somebody who took a 60-spoke rim, tightened 2 of them, left 58 loose, and got their run out the way it was supposed to be and got their check and went home. So we go through every one and get it to tension. Then we take the dial indicator on the run out, and we try to take it from the factory 20 to 40 thousandths down to 1 or 2 thousandths before it even thinks about high-speed balancing it. So you're always going to be loosening the side that's out the most and tightening the other side to bring it around. It's a slow process to bring it this way and that way. When you're dealing with an old one that's beat up a lot, but it's still adjustable, you can't put a dial indicator on the rim because it's going to be, showing you stuff. So we actually true the tire with a dial indicator from the center line. If we get that tire, no matter what the wheel's doing, to where it's not wiggling on the road where it matches the road, you're going to ride smooth. The wheel could do what it wants, but if the tire is moving back and forth, side to side, it's going to vibrate. So we can take a one that's bent pretty bad and actually true the tire by throwing the rim, what I would say, out a little bit more and getting the tire straight so that where the rubber meets the road, it's not wiggling.
Okay.
And Alan, do you find any difference with being able to true chrome wire wheels compared to painted?
With the chrome wire wheels, the difference is that, unless they're really old, with the stainless steel spokes that most all of them have now, because it's been a long time since there was chrome plated spokes. Most of those wheels have gone bye-bye. The stainless steel does not rust and become encapsulated become one with the nipple from rust. So it's adjustable. When you're dealing with painted ones that are older, it's steel to steel. So depending on if you're at the coast, it might not be long before you can adjust. And I have people say, I want to ship them to you to see. I said, tell me the year of it. Tell me how old these are. Take a 1/4-inch wrench, put it on the nipple, and find one that's loose and see if you can tighten and loosen it. If all it does is twist the spoke, I mean, if you can't adjust it, I can't adjust it. It's time for new.
Mm-hmm.
Peter, once again, what should we do as owners of wire wheels to be certain that the wheel is safe? I mean, does one run around and grab each individual wire and attempt to tighten it?
Well, there's two things that makes a wheel safe. One, you can just take a wrench and tap on the spokes. They'll have tone. If you're tinging around and you hit some that go thud, 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 they're probably loose. And the longer they stay loose, eventually they will start, as you sling forward and sling back as they're rolling around. Will you ever notice when you break a spoke, it's the head that breaks off, not at the nipple, because it's jackhammering it because it's gotten loose by going over and over while you're rotating the tire going fast. So you want to find that loose spoke. The other thing that's only dangerous is the splines wear. If it reaches that point, which I have a sheet also, on things you must know on Tech Tip, how worn are the splines? Like you don't have a worn out spline on a wheel and you replace it with a new wheel without replacing the hub. Because with age, they start getting thinner, the grooves, and start rolling over. And you might not even be able to get a new wheel on that, but that's where it goes and comes off and you're singing "It's a Bad Time to Leave Me Loose Wheel" as you go off the road. But those are the most dangerous spots. Is you want to find out how the tone sounds. It'll tell you when it's dead because it'll go thud.
Thank you.
A couple is not bad, but pay attention because a couple means these are loose. They're going to start making the others to the side that are tight take up the stress and stretch. Mm-hmm. So eventually it's like, well, I only had 2 loose last year, and then I took a trip to Colorado and back. Now I got 4 loose. And it's like, yeah, and eventually they're just going to start breaking.
So, Alan, do you recommend testing them in terms of looking for that thud and that sort of thing with them on the car or off the car?
Will not matter. Okay. Will not matter if any of you guys ever did any autocrossing or SCCA. That's one of their checks. They'll go around and check, and they'll tell you before you race. And I'm sure you've heard this even doing autocrosses, guys. They're going, you can't have any broken spokes, you can't have any loose spokes. And every now and then they may come around with a wrench and ting around, and if they find a bunch of dead spokes, they go, you're not running this on the track.
Gotcha. Okay. Good.
So is it a pretty common scenario to send all 4 wire wheels and tires to you and have you do your magic and send it back?
Yes, it is, and I'll tell you why. Because in the past, which I just kind of refuse it now, there's not been, it's been 100%. Anybody sent me 2 because they said, I just have a shake up front. They called back going, that took out half my shake. I went, you sent me half your wheels and tires. Now that those fixed, you're feeling the back. and the back's out. But the front was so bad you didn't know it till we fixed that. Now you got to send it back. I said, I don't like chewing my cabbage twice. Send me your stuff. I'm done. Call me in 10 years. I hope to God I'm still alive, and we'll put some good rubber on it, and you can enjoy riding again.
And Alan, just the other thing that Alan does with that is he also, if you buy tires from him as well, you can have them shaved, and that's what I've always done. So on my BN1, my 100, I ship my wire wheels down to Alan and get the tires from him, and he was able to true them, and he sends them back to you. He tells you which where to mount them, right, left, and front and rear. So to assure you're going to have the best ride with your car.
Yeah, the old tire shaving method is kind of a lost art. You know, you got one person up in Philly that's doing it, but they don't do the truing. But even a brand new tire is a molded item. So there's going to be little high spots or low spots. You won't have to cut much off, but once you get the wheel straight, you want to jig it up and put it on our tire truing machine, which shaves off a thousandths at a time until you know there's no hop. Plus, even if it's perfect when we go through it, cuts the mold agent off, so immediately it's grip better. SCCA guys, who VIR is just 45 minutes from me. So every year in the spring, tons come in here. Cut the new tires so I've got grip on the first lap. I don't have to heat them up and get the coating off of them, you know, and scrub them down. And they're all like, yeah, I'm usually running full speed by the second lap while these guys are on new tires still sliding around, but you shaved off a few thousandths. Old tires, depending on whether they set and got flat spotted, they'll probably need it. Tires that come from, and I'm not going to say a name, but come from some place that's been sitting on the shelf or a cheap but expensive tire, they come in brand new, shaped in the letter D. And I've had to call customers and go, first of all, this tire's crap. I don't care if it's brand new or who you bought it from. I'm going to have to cut most of the tread off to make it round, or it's going to beat you to death in your XK 140. You know, I suggest others. There's other tires out there that are come around. But by doing that, you end all of the up and down problems you're going to have from a tire, making it bounce by shave truing it.
Great. Thanks, Alan.
I have another question, Peter.
Go ahead, Dave.
Concerning winter storage, flatness on tires comes about when the car is sitting in the same spot for many months on end. What is your suggestion in terms of attempting to prohibit that from happening? Do you put the car up on blocks?
You can put it up on jack stands. That would be one thing.
Or rotate the
easy
tires.
way. No, you don't want to rotate. Once I say put them there, they're probably the best they're going to be, and you don't have the rotation problems like front-wheel drives. The cheap and easy way is just remember about every month, go out there and just roll the car to a new position.
That's
not
what I
sitting
meant
in the
by
same
rotation.
spot.
Yeah. Okay, sure.
Yeah, just roll it forward a little bit. And it depends on the tire. If you're running some Vertistines, which are a summer tire, and you're in Wisconsin or you're in Canada, those don't take cold well at all. So I tell people you might need a Michelin XZX or something else that's in an all-season tire. They don't like real cold Vertistine. I said, but definitely on Vertistine, I was going, just put it up on jack stands until the salt's off the road. You'll be fine. Until then, it's like just move it forward. Then you can move it back. Just go out there every few weeks and give it a new position to sit on that concrete.
Got it. Thank you.
Great.
Hey, Alan, this is
Yeah.
David Bevan. What was the Michelin model you just mentioned? For
The
cold weather?
XZX 165.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's an all-season. And it's what we've had around back even in the late 60s and all, and it was so far ahead being a radial. It was just amazing to us back then, to have a radial. And they're still being made. Coker sells them, and they're still a really good tire. Of course, I remember buying them for $20. You don't get them for that anymore. I like the Vertistines because they're stickier. I like the Holland made. But if you're up in the cold weather, I'm going, you might want to go with an all-season tire on that.
Well, this is Ken here. Interestingly, when I got married in '73, I was working at the BMW dealership in Burlington, Vermont, and BMW absolutely insisted that we balance all of the tires, all four corners on the car. And that was just the very beginning of radials.
Yeah, then that was the real true way, the old lost out way. If you did it on the car, you're reproducing as it is on the car, which is why we use the actual hubs and knockoffs, because you can't mail your car in across the country. That's a little difficult. But one old man who's long gone now, he shaved and trued the tires right on the car by watching the vibration on the mirror with the door open and shaving it sitting right there and balancing it by eye. And it was phenomenal. I was just fascinated by this guy. And I have some of the equipment, but I don't have the strength to do it that way anymore. I found something that works a little better and easier for us. But that was the ticket. And I always say when I'm doing a seminar, when people say they all have scuttle shake, I went, well, let me ask you a question. If you go into a BMW dealership today and test drive a new BMW and you get it up to 55, 60 and the steering wheel's shaking, are you going to write a check? Well, no. And I said, then how did they ever sell a damn car? How did the British sell any? I tell you, because they all had wheelwrights doing like you did at the dealership. So that car left with the wheels round, straight, and perfectly balanced using the right old equipment and the old knowledge of how to do it right on a wire wheel. And they didn't have a shake. It wasn't until all those places closed down and everybody passed away that that art was lost. And you were going again to the illegal alien at the Exxon and going, yeah, they all shake. I'm going to put some braces in it. Well, that ain't the problem.
Yeah, it was actually part of the new car checklist before it went out the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it made you go, God, this thing handles so well and rides so well.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit here. We've got a question from Dave Walsh regarding, he's got an intermittent clutch problem. And so Dave, you want to give us a little more background to that? Now, is this a new clutch? You said you're having some intermittent problems with that. And Dave, you're on mute. There you go, Dave.
Yeah, just occasionally, usually when I'm coming off the highway or I haven't used the clutch for a while, there's nothing there. It's just, free air. I pump it a couple of times, it goes away. Now, it didn't do that. It hasn't done that before. Just started doing it. So reading the forums, etc., I've decided the first initial thing to do is to simply change the hose, which is an old hose. It doesn't look like it's leaking or anything, but I've seen some of those hoses that look great and they're completely clogged up. At any rate, so I got the new hose. I'm going to swap it out, and I just wanted to get some input from you all on how to do that without getting any air, or at least not much air in the system.
Mike Salter smiling.
Oh, Mike,
putting a hose on that's full of air, it's not going to be easy to put it on without getting air in.
Yeah, that's going to happen. And the hoses on the brakes and that, and then Bob can answer this question too, if Bob Buell's still there. But these hoses, about after 10 years, even using DOT 4, they swell up. And I had a call today from a club member. He said, it's been 10 years, and I noticed I put my brakes on today after getting the car out, and the back wheels were locked up, but 2 minutes later, it rolled. I said, it's the hose. They swell up. They'll let you push forward fluid, but it won't let it release. So it just messes up everything. So definitely new hose, maybe a kit in the slave. You're going to have it off, or a new slave, and then bleed out the whole system with fresh fluid. That's my answer. What do you think, Bob?
Yeah, well, what we find happens with the hoses is they look like brand new, but the inside rubber tends to crack, break, and you get little flaps, and the fluid will go by it one way, but it won't come back the other way, and that's what causes particularly at the rear brake hose. They seem to be the worst for that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I found with my brakes. I had no rear brakes the first year, so I had the car and didn't realize I took that tributary hose off on the brakes, and the thing was completely blocked. And it looked fine on the outside. So at any rate, you were saying change the hose out and the slave, or just swap the hose out and see what happens?
I think if you're going to be there, if you're going to be there, I would also pull and clean out the slave and put a kit in it. Because it's easier to get that hose off by just taking the slave off, take the hose off, clean it out, put a kit in it with rubber grease, put a new hose on that, and then you'll be able to put it back up. Or you'll be chasing what is that old hose now deteriorated rubber inside, put inside of that slave cylinder. That's going to eat up the cups in that, and you're going to have problems from that. So the easiest way, short of pulling the transmission to see if something's wrong, again, is just redo the slave and the hose.
Okay. All right, gotcha.
That'll eliminate that.
Like the actuator down underneath the car.
Yeah, the slave that's on the hose goes to.
I got you. Okay, well, they're not
the
so
bell house.
expensive. I've priced. I guess I could do that. Get that thing. The thing's drivable the way it is. It's just that it's kind of a, once in a while it's a little irritating. I have to keep, making sure that I'm a little afraid the clutch isn't going to work and just pump it. It goes away, but I assume like anything like that, it's going to get worse. By the way, fellas, Mike and Pete, I did do the freeze plugs. We discussed it back December, and it all went very well. I took out the manifolds, and it wasn't that easy, but managed to get it done, and it's all back together and working.
Thank you. Good for you.
This is what I pulled out of there.
Oh, no. That looks great. Look at that.
That was blocking it up. It's the overheating problem that I had was, when I idled it, it would overheat after like 10 minutes, and now that has gone away. So I'm very happy with the way that turned out. Thanks for your advice. It was all excellent advice.
Well, good. Well, that's why we're here. So we appreciate that. So we got another interesting question. I just
have a question regarding that one, if I can, Pete.
Sure,
if you're going to be rebuilding the slave cylinder, if it's that old, you should also put a kit in the master cylinder. It's just not worth doing one, then finding you have to do the other.
Yeah. The master cylinder itself, though, is always fun to get off.
Oh, yeah. It's part of the fun.
Yeah, it's always it's a challenge there. I think at my age, it's getting underneath and just getting the damn pin out off the pedal now. And I get out and I go, oh, my back, oh, my neck, oh, my back, oh, my neck.
Yeah,
that's how it goes.
All right.
That's what a chiropractor's for.
There you go.
Yeah.
So Rob Moore. So thanks for joining. Rob's a new member of the club. He's from Needham. He has he's got a Healey that's been in hibernation for over 20 years. It's a 61 BT7, and he's looking to get it roadworthy. So Rob, if you don't mind, I'm going to share that Word document, and you want to give us a little background on the car and what you're looking to accomplish?
Sure. No, that'd be great. I actually bought my Healey in 1975, and it was rusty, needed a lot of work. So during summers in college in the late 70s, I did the restoration work in my dad's auto body shop. So I did all the sheet metal work, paint work, etc., myself, and the mechanicals. I think I actually joined the club, I think it was in the early 80s, but it's been quite a while. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, as you get a little older, career starts winding up, children start taking up a lot of your time. So I was spending less and less time with my first girl, the Healey, and ended up putting it in storage in my parents' basement in Vermont about 20 years ago, and I haven't touched it since then. So now that I'm retired, I figure I got to get that Healey back out again. So I know it's kind of a daunting task to recommission it, so I'm sort of looking for advice and pitfalls, recommendations as to how to look at sort of reawakening her, so to speak.
So it was a good driving, running car when you parked it 20 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, it burned oil, and there's some, suspension things that I need to tend to replace. There's a leaf broken in one of the rear springs.
Okay.
But it was, it was mobile. You could drive it down the road, etc.
Right. Now, so I'd asked Rob earlier when he sent in the email. So you don't know if the motor turns over. So that's really the first place, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so as you can see on Rob's question, as it relates to using, so was the recommendation from the experts we have on the call to remove the spark plugs and put, mystery oil or something of that sort down there for several weeks, days before trying to turn the motor over? Anyone have any thoughts on that?
I would check, see if the motor actually turns over before I do anything. If the motor turns over, then, well, it probably doesn't need any of that treatment.
Okay. And you're saying, obviously, Michael, would do that by hand, correct?
Yeah, do it by hand. I mean, I'm working on a car right now, which has been sitting for 34 years. And I cranked it over. It started up fine. I put new oil in it, cranked it over, started up fine. Back wheels off the ground. I ran it through all the gears. The clutch worked fine. And now I've taken the engine out and taken all the seals out. I'm replacing all the seals, all the springs and the suspension bushes. When a car gets to that age, most of that stuff really needs to be attended to. So
Yeah,
you
I
are looking
concur.
at a long job.
Yes.
Yeah, I concur. Just know one thing with the 61, and it's been sitting that long. There's not a piece of rubber on that car that doesn't need replacing. We're talking about wheel cylinders. We're talking about hoses. We're talking about everything that's got rubber. The diaphragm in your fuel pump. If it's rubber, it may work for a couple of hours, but it's probably going to crack. So if it's rubber, it needs to be replaced for sure, or you'll get leaks everywhere.
And that also applies to all the oil seals. I found on this particular car that the rear hub seals, the front hub seals, the overdrive rear seal, the differential front seal, they were like concrete.
Yeah, all of them that are rubber, they're going to go.
So when you say that, I mean, some of those seals were replaced since I owned the car, but are you guys sort of feeling like, hey, if it's been 20 odd years, even if they were fairly new when you put it in storage, you're probably going to have to pull all those?
20 years is a long time for a piece of rubber.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, and the rubber's not getting any lubrication from any of the oils in the rear end, transmission, any of that is sitting there dry. When you're driving it, it's usually getting oil, like those cars just love oil going everywhere. But it's not getting any oil. It's sitting there drying out.
Yep. And the rubber wasn't that good. The replacement rubber wasn't that good to begin with anyways, in the late 70s, 80s. So if I had to put, if I was going to put Marvel Mystery Oil into the cylinders, is it take just a little or a lot? And how long would you usually let that soak?
Well, I think, Michael, your suggestion was try it without it first, right?
Try it without it first, and if the crank's over, just put a little oil down just engine oil down the bores and crank it over a bit more. The chances are that if it cranks over, the rings are probably quite free in the pistons, and it'll probably run.
Yeah,
once it gets warmed up, nothing will help it.
Right. No, I followed that part. I'm just thinking if I get in there and put a wrench on it in a bar and it won't turn.
Then diesel.
What's that?
Diesel for a week. Pour
Diesel
about
for-
a half a cup of diesel in each cylinder and leave it for a week.
Oh, okay.
Diesel's very effective.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's good to
It's
know.
hard to find them. They froze up. It's amazing how these old blocks done. I've had them come in here where it's been 20 some years and they were expecting to spend $8 grand on an engine rebuild And we call them 2 weeks later and tell them what their bill is. And they went, you rebuilt an engine for that? Didn't need it. We soaked down the cylinder, spun it around, gave it a tune-up and a fresh oil change, and you got a good engine here. You ain't got no damn brakes, but you got a good engine. So they were like, well, I don't have to spend the money. I said, oh, yeah, there's a lot of other places you got to spend the money, but not on an engine. So these are tough damn engines. They really are.
Well, and the other thing that Rob confirmed is the car has been inside in a dry, heated basement. So,
yeah, that's good. That means the seals on the everywhere else is also dried up. But it means that it's probably great inside of those cylinder walls on the engine, and it'll turn over just fine. And I prefer diesel. I just don't like the diesel smell, so I'll use Marvel myself just because of the smell's better. But I think you'll find that if you soak it like you said, and you'll be able to crank it over just a little bit and it'll be okay. Just remember, when you got the plugs out and you've got a cup of diesel in all those cylinders, throw you an old towel over there because it's going to throw it everywhere if it turns over at all.
Oh,
I've had good luck.
Go ahead.
I've had good luck using PB Blaster in cylinders.
Yeah, I like PB Blaster too.
Yeah, I had an engine that was burning oil in one cylinder, and I did that, filled it pretty good, and I put a little bit of compressed air to blow it down into the cylinder, then go crazy with it. And by God, it seemed to have loosened up the rings and
really
pretty well. Yeah. So I read that on the internet and I tried it and worked out pretty good. I've never had anything I couldn't get loose with PB Blaster. Amazing stuff.
Okay. That's good point. Thanks, Ted.
Yeah.
So any other thoughts and recommendations for Rob as he starts down this this journey? Now, Rob, are you planning on leaving the car up in Vermont, or are you going to bring it down to Massachusetts to try to get it back on the road?
Yeah, I haven't figured that out yet, Pete. I mean, it would be easier because I'm here in Mass now. At the time back then, I just didn't have any place to store it. So ideally, I'd like to get it back down here because it'd be easier just to be able to go out in the garage and work on it. But
one thing that I would suggest you take a really good look at is the flex line from the engine block to the oil pressure gauge. They are very prone to failure when they get it, and they can cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, even though they look like they're stainless, that's just a coating on the outside. That's a rubber hose. So it's just easier to replace it than find out that it's clogged up your oil gauge and at the same time it's spewing oil everywhere down the highway.
so I mean, when I parked it, I was just running standard 20 weight 50 Quaker State. Is that still sort of the recommendation, but to use some of the oils that now have the zinc, like the ZDPP?
Yeah, you get it from Castrol, or what we use is Valvoline BR1 Racing Oil 2050, which has zinc in it. And that's kind of the most common of a lot of us, I believe.
Right.
It works well.
And Rob has that on his list, Alan. So that's what I use too, Rob. The ZDP with that Valvoline. You can also get it out, talk about Brad Penn, that they sell, there's a number of them that are out there, but you do want to get the zinc additive.
Okay.
One other question for you. Do you happen to know, does it have antifreeze in it now?
It does.
There's a good chance that the frost plugs in the engine will be fine then.
Okay.
Lucas also makes they call it a hot rod oil, and that's got high zinc in it also.
And a fresh started engine, we always, if it's a new one, and even an old one, we add extra ZDP to it, just to make sure we're lubricating those lifters and all real well. You can buy it in a small bottle and just a little extra additive for break-in, and even one that's been sitting. It won't hurt because you're not going to keep that oil in there long. You're going to run it a little bit and change it out so you can clean out your galleys and stuff and put fresh oil again.
Right. So should I actually change the oil out even before I try to start it up? Yeah,
Yeah, you want some lubrication. The oil is broke down with age.
yeah. And as far as, do you think there's any need to try and pre-oil it? I mean, it's not like it's a brand new engine. I mean, it's.
Crank it out, take the plugs out and crank it over until you get oil pressure registering before you
Yeah.
try to start it.
But having changed the oil first, Michael.
Having
Right.
changed the oil, yeah.
Yeah.
And Rob was also asking questions about the coolant for that. Would you recommend replacing the antifreeze before trying to turn the car over? Not necessary, Michael?
I wouldn't bother. You're going to be changing that and doing a major service after you've got it running and heated up. But for initial startup, the coolant that's in there will probably be just fine. Another thing that will give you trouble probably is the water pump will probably start to leak.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. So then if I change all the fluids now and then fire it up, then I got to get back in there to do the water pump.
It'll when you don't bother changing the antifreeze, the coolant, run the engine, the water pump will leak, and then you drain the coolant and change the pump all in one go. Easy as pie.
Exactly. So back when I had it running, the wisdom, at least among some of the folks, was to pull out the thermostat and just let the water free flow because we were overheating. Is that still the wisdom, or is that just bad advice I got back then?
I think the jury's still out on that one.
Yeah, it depends if the thermostat's stuck closed or not. That's just eliminating that being the possibility of overheating by eliminating that. But you don't want to run without a thermostat. And hopefully if you can get the sleeved one, you want that because it does the best.
Sleeved thermostat?
The sleeve thermostat, the ones that originally were in there, that the sleeve came down and blocked out the bypass hole there in the head. And if you use the cheap thermostat, you always got 30% of your hot water being recirculated in the engine and not getting to the radiator. So the sleeve thermostat, as it opens, the sleeve comes up and blocks off that bypass hose. And they did that because the iron block itself took so long to heat up. You wanted to recirculate 25, 30% of that water back through without cooling it down to try to get it warm faster and heat up that. That stays open with the cheap little thermostat you put on top. So you're never really cooling down all of your water. Not all of it's going into the radiator and getting cooled.
Okay. So does that mean if you're just running at free flow, is hot water along the same ideas going directly back into the block?
Yeah, that hole is always there in the head.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
But that eliminated the thermostat being stuck and causing you a problem. So, but I'm with Mike. First, you want to just turn it over, see if you can fire that thing off.
Yeah.
It'll tell you when it starts overheating if you go, okay, stop now. We got heat in it. Getting hot. Time to go to work and put new parts in.
Yeah.
I think you'll be surprised. I think it'll probably fire up.
Yeah.
You'll probably have to bash the heel pad behind the driver's seat to get the fuel pump to work.
Yeah, it's probably still running the old points pump, so keep the hammer in your hand.
Oh, yeah, those are probably stuck.
Yeah, you'll be needing a new fuel pump. I mean, we all remember the days of keeping a hammer there so we could go down the road and just smack the back of the wall there where the pump was to keep it going like you're whipping a horse down the Kentucky Derby. Come on, yeah, keep running, keep clicking.
Keep clicking, yeah.
So there's no rebuild for those?
You're best to just buy new.
Is it? Okay.
They're solid state now. They're so much better. It's best just to go new.
And Rob, there's also other things, there's Facet, some other pumps that are out there if you don't want to go SU
Okay.
that seem to be much more reliable than the SUs.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
AirTech makes one for marine use, and it's 2.5 to 4 pound little can, not as loud as the Purelator chatterboxes and faucet chatterboxes, and they're inline. But if you're still running the original, you want something simplified because you have the mount brackets, just put a new solid state SU on it. Pump.
Yeah.
Hey,
Because
can you
you'll have the
move it down
banjo
so we can
fittings.
see the rest of the letter?
Sure. Let me come down to the bottom of that. Let's see. So he's getting now into the frame issues. So how much rust was there on the car, Rob?
Quite a bit. It was, I bought it in upstate New York. So, obviously the rocker panels were gone. The front dog legs on the door. I'm sorry, the front dog legs on the rear quarters were gone.
But you've replaced all that back in the day?
Yeah. Yeah. I think at that point it was hard to get new parts. So I actually went down to Maryland and a couple other places and got decent used parts. So I got some doors and some fenders. I did have to repair 1 or 2 of the dog legs on the rear fenders.
Mhm.
I don't remember you being able to buy floor sets or trunk sets, sheet metal. So I just made them in the shop,
Based on what I can read, sorry, Rob, based on what I can read there, I would be looking very carefully at the front of the rear springs where they're attached to what are called the body brackets or the outriggers. That's a weakness. And if that lets go, you'll have a bit of a problem with handling.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the part that concerns me is that I'm not sure that I was using the metal that was in the shop. So I suspect it's not the same gauge as what originally came on the Heelys.
It doesn't look to me as though you've done anything with the suspension mounting points, and they are a real weakness at the front of the rear springs.
No, absolutely. I didn't do anything there. I did.
Check them very carefully.
I did have to put some metal on the bottom of the outriggers by the, the passenger compartment. And then there's a long, I call it an outrigger, but it actually runs from the rear of the front fender through essentially the rocker panel area where the door shut face is. I did have to replace those as well.
Yeah, inner sill, as we call it.
Inner sill, exactly.
Yeah,
Well,
It sounds like you got most of it.
yeah, but I was 19 years old. I wasn't really giving a shit too much about safety at that point, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I just want to get in the car and get on the road. So I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to sort of really evaluate that frame, because I know, it did have some holes on the, like I said, on the bottom of those outriggers and the cross member that goes under the gas tank.
Yeah, check that real carefully.
Yeah, so Rob, if you're interested, I've got 2 lifts. So if we get the car down here, we can get it up on the lift.
Okay, that'd be great.
I've got a drive-on lift as well as a scissor lift.
Oh, okay, wow. So Peter, could we back up to some of the fuel stuff?
Sure.
Last time I was actually working on the car and running it, there was a huge debate about unleaded gas. I actually bought some re-lead additive, which I actually just found. And there was all this whole issue about whether you need to harden your valve seats. Can you guys just tell me what the current wisdom is on that?
Didn't happen.
Yeah, it didn't happen.
The wisdom.
Well, there is
didn't
to
happen?
it. It just didn't happen.
The wisdom didn't happen, or the
No,
hardened?
no, the valve seat recession that everybody's so scared of on the big Healey engines, it just never happened.
Oh, okay, I see. Oh, well, that's awesome.
Now, I think they were trying to sell additives to us.
So nobody uses the re-lead additives or any of that stuff anymore? Oh, okay, wow.
Yeah. You have more problems sometimes getting the right hardened ones to work right and not get too hot and actually seize up on the rods. Seen it. But no, it just didn't happen. And Mike's absolutely right. You know, when you're talking about kids come along and you lose the car, well, I've been divorced 4 times. I still got the same damn Healey. So I knew what was important in my life, and I never put an additive in it yet, and it probably has got over 800 and some thousand miles on it. Still fine.
Kept those priorities right.
I kept the priorities. It's like, I got my Healey, you got the house, see ya.
Fair trade, fair enough.
So, Alan, do you use high octane?
Yeah, I always try to, if it's normal, I run the, 93 octane. I like the highest octane I can get. Every now and then I'm lucky enough that my partner has an airplane, so I'm able to go out the airport. And when I've got a car here that hadn't run in a while, we flush everything out. We'll go out there and buy Aviation 100 octane leaded and run a half a tank of that through there to clean the system out. But that can get expensive and it's hard to find. And I prefer to always try to find some that's high octane and non-ethanol because it's just better for the car. You don't have the vapor lock in the summer. So the highest octane you can get, and if you got to use the alcohol, it's no big deal. It has some downsides, but overall, yeah, don't try to run it on the cheapest octane. You'll end up going, it's knocking. You'll get spark knocking.
So speaking of that gas, I mean, there's not much gas in it, but it's been in there 20 years, so I was going to have to drain that out.
Yep.
Assuming that it's not sludge, is it sufficient to just drain it out, or do I need to actually clean the inside of that gas tank, you think?
Probably gonna need to clean
I don't
that.
think you got to worry about it. When you drain it out from the drain plug, catch it in something that you can see in it.
Yeah.
And see what comes out. If it's just, looks like Barsol or kerosene, you're okay. But if it's got a bunch of crap in it, it's just kind of easier to go. A brand new tank ain't but about $150.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't do the sloshing stuff like we used to think, and get it where you put the additive in there and slosh it, because the alcohol gas breaks that free, and you got this big balloon floating around in there when it breaks away from the tank, and it stops up the pickup.
Yeah.
But if you don't get a bunch of rust and stuff out, I wouldn't worry about it. That's when you want to go to a marina and go, yeah, I need the highest octane non-alcohol. I want to put about a tank in there of that and run it through the system.
Right. That's what I was, hoping. And then I would just drain the carbs and the bowls and, just flush the old gas out of the line if it doesn't actually drain out by itself.
Based on what you're saying about the amount of metalwork repair that was, my guess would be the gas tank actually will need replacing. It'll probably be rusted through on the bottom.
That actually was replaced.
Then you're good.
Just before I.
You'll be fine.
Just before I put it up.
Well, you're good.
Did you go with it? Was that a steel tank or an aluminum tank, Rob?
Boy, I think it was steel, but to tell you the truth, Pete, I don't remember.
Okay.
My memory's
They do have
not.
aluminum. They have aluminum ones now too.
Yeah, my memory's not quite as good as it used to be.
Well, you haven't been through 4 wives, I hope.
Well, when I have,
No,
I wouldn't worry about the tank. When I have people come in here going, "You're going to need a new tank." Well, I want that $700 aluminum. I'm going, "You're 80 years old. The first one lasts you 60 years. Do the math. $150 for a steel one. You're not going to be let to drive in 10 more years. They're going to take your license. So let's put a new steel one in and save $600.
so I think, Peter, not to try and run the show, but I think the only other question I had was about the brakes and the clutch, having switched to silicone a few years back, as to whether that would need to be replaced. It sounds like from what folks are saying, I'm going to have to mess with the parts of the brake and clutch system that have rubber in them anyways.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to have to do
Absolutely.
them all. You're going to have to replace all the rubbers in the brake system and the clutch. You really are.
Yeah.
But I'm also looking at what you put there on line F, and it said you replace, I think it says you replace the brake fluid with silicon fluid, but didn't replace the lines. You can't mix the old style fluid with new silicon fluid, so you probably mixed the fluids together if you didn't clean out the lines when you put silicon in the reservoir.
Yeah,
Did you flush out the lines, Rob?
I was wondering about that. I didn't like flush them out with solvent or anything like that. I mean, I flushed through the old DOT fluid so that it was silicone that was coming through, but I didn't clean the lines or, somehow cleanse out the calipers or anything like that. Is that what you're talking about, Bob?
Yes. Yeah.
So even just that little residual on the inside of the pipes could cause a problem.
Yeah, when you switch, you should flush out the lines, Rob.
To just mix new silicon in with the old fluid. They're not compatible liquids.
Right.
But that's water over the dam now. You can't worry about that right now.
Yeah, you're going to be replacing everything anyway.
Right.
On those brakes.
So it sounds like probably the first thing is to see if you can get the motor to run. And then start tackling all these other things.
Exactly. Well, I really appreciate all the tips and helps and suggestions. And like I said, I really appreciate you guys spending the time to go through it.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. And just enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
This is a hobby. Have fun with it. And when you get frustrated, open another beer. That's why they make that stuff.
I figure I'm going to take a cue from your book, Alan. I've still got the square body Sprite that I bought in high school for $50. So when I finish this, I think I'll go back and resurrect that one.
Wow. Okay. You're a glutton for punishment.
Well, can't have enough Heelys.
Right. Exactly.
That's true. That's true. So we got a couple more questions. I realize we've gone a little over, but Jim Began's got a question as it relates to a rattle he's getting from the back of the driver's seat. It sounds like it might be the springs slapping together, mainly on medium to hard bumps. All the spring shackle bushes are good. And is wondering if anyone might have else experienced this sort of rattle.
Check your
rear shock mounting bolts.
You hear that, Jim? Jim, we're not hearing you. It says connection to audio. Maybe Jim, turn off your video. Maybe you don't have enough bandwidth on your Wi-Fi. But hopefully you can hear us. But it's probably there. You go, Jim. Jim, can you say anything? We're not hearing you, Jim. We can see you.
I spoke to your mother briefly about.
And again, if someone else on the call, if you're not speaking, please put your phone on mute.
already gonna have a meeting.
Jim, you still trying that? So again, it's probably that the rear shocks, and check those mounting bolts. They do tend to loosen up. Why don't, as Jim's trying to get his audio working, Dave Berube, you still on the line?
Yes, sir.
Great. So BJ8, right? That's what you're discussing as it relates to the old dash and old seat pans in the metal pan, asking if it's worth saving those or not. So so let's start with the metal stuff. The old seats in the metal pans, what kind of condition are they in?
Shot.
Okay.
They're rotten, and so I brought up those two parts, Pete, but it's like in general, back to our changing that fuel pump with Rob. Like, so let's say it's an original fuel pump. Is the originality important to keep down the road? Does that make sense? The question?
Well, you can buy perfect reproductions of all parts of the seats from Kilmartins. Now, they're not going to be around much longer, but they do make perfect seat parts.
No, my question is the value of saving them. Is there a value to save the old?
No, there's no value to saving them. They're covered up with upholstery.
It's not gonna make the car more valuable to have all the old rusty sheet metal with it. Nobody's gonna want it.
So let's move forward. I got an old starter. I put in a new beehive, or what are they called now? This can't remember so do you save the old starter or not?
The starter might be worth something to somebody as a rebuild. Yes, I would save the starter, but not the sheet metal.
Okay, so it's not going along a mechanical line. It might be worth saving mechanicals, but other things such as that upholstery, my dashboard, not worth it.
I don't think anybody's gonna want it.
Even the
No, you can use it. You can use it and have it re-veneered and refinish it, and it's got all the mounting holes in the right place to put it back in, versus getting something that's new and it may be way too dark from what you like, but it's just a veneer. So depends on how bad it's gotten. It can be re-veneered, or if it's just the poly cracking, that can be taken off and repolyed and refinished.
So Dave, have you replaced the dash? Do you have a new dash in the car now?
Yeah. Yes.
That old dash probably has very little value because you've already replaced it.
Okay. Even if it's original. That's my question here, is the originality type of thing. But I guess I've gotten that answer.
Yeah, you can throw it up on eBay and see if it sells or something of that sort. But they're quote unquote a dime a dozen for BJ8s, and everyone's got that's got an original car. Probably the dash looks as bad or similar to what they have already in their cars, so they're not going to want to bother to change that out.
When you find somebody selling an original car and they say it's all original, it should be worth $100,000. All I'm hearing is everything's wore out. That means I got to replace every bit of this old wore out original stuff. That's not a value to me, and throw it away.
Yeah, but as the point out, the starter, the generator, those they can be rebuilt. I've got a spare set of rebuilds for all my cars, and they're worth saving.
One comment on the BJ8 dash. The original dash, the veneer was actually what was called bookend. That means if you split a piece of wood in half and opened it up like this, that was the sides, the two pieces of the dash. I don't think the replacements are like that way. So if the wood itself and the veneer is good, yeah, somebody might be interested.
Yeah, if it looks like refinishing because it was an English burl walnut, which is not able to get anymore. So if it's still got some good veneer, somebody might want to buy that and refinish it if the veneer is still usable.
Correct.
eBay probably the way to go with that, Dave, if you're trying to sell that.
No, Pete, that wasn't never my intention of reselling any of this stuff. I just
Okay.
wasn't sure if the purchaser of my car would be interested in the original
Oh.
parts. That's really, maybe I didn't word my question quite right there. So
Okay. Paul,
that's my
Definitely
question.
not the metal. I would send that along with the new owner of the car. Here's the original dash.
are you getting ready to sell your car?
No, I'm not, Pete,
Okay.
but
Okay. Yeah.
I am in the process of cleaning up my basement and I have piles of this old stuff and it's like, should I get rid of it or not?
Don't we all? So, okay. Other question tonight that we haven't covered?
I have a couple, Pete.
Go ahead, Alan.
So it's Sprite time. No more of those big cars you guys get to drive. So last week or last month, we talked about my endless saga trying to get the brakes to work on this car. I changed the brakes to it had disc brakes in the front and now it has disc brakes in the back, and we changed it to a dual circuit master cylinder. And I've gone around and pumped the brakes or bled the brakes like 4 times, and it's still spongy, and if you push real hard, you can hit the floor. Right? If you pump it, you get more resistance, but if you push real hard, you can hit the floor. So Mike has told me, I guess you start from the beginning and you plug up the new master cylinder, and then I guess start from there. I just wanted, before I do that, because I don't even have the plugs, those things cost like $10 a piece. You have to get, before I go that far, is there anything else? It doesn't leak. Nothing's leaking. But it's just,
You said you got air on the line, Alan. And then now, did you convert to silicone as well?
No.
Oh, okay.
I listened to the various.
Okay, theoretically, you should have a better pedal with that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Alan, did you try the trick of clamping off the brake hoses?
I did. What Bob Abbott said, like you right now, I have my wife's in the car. She pushes the brake down. I say, I open. I go, ready? I open it, push the brake down, close it. Right?
No, hang on. No, just a second.
Sorry.
You clamp off all 3 brake hoses very gently with vice grips, just enough to stop flow. Then you see how the pedal feels. If the pedal feels really hard when you do that, which it should, then you hold the pedal down and have somebody undo the vice grips one at a time, and that'll tell you which part of the brake system is causing your problem. Did you follow that?
I didn't even understand it, so no.
So you want three sets of vice grips.
Go to my blog. It's all explained.
Okay. I was writing down notes. I didn't pick that one up. But so here's the deal. I went out and bought steel braided brake hoses. Everything's brand new.
No, they're a pain in the ass.
Yeah. So I bought, when I bought this car, it had rubber hoses, and I've been in vehicles where the rubber hose blew out, and I didn't want to deal with that for this old car. So I went out and just got these, so I don't know. Can I do that same trick?
No, can't do that on steel hoses.
There you go. So the fact that I didn't listen, I didn't hear it, didn't really. Okay. So the net of this is one thing I noticed is that when they do push the brake hose, sometimes, I did get a couple of bubbles, which is what I was looking for. Right. Yeah. And sometimes you see, it's kind of hard to see it through a clear plastic tube, but you kind of see a little bit of, sometimes I'm not even sure what I'm looking at, but it looks like there's fluid rushing through that might have air, but like I feel the reservoir is not that big. First off, the thing is only,
you got to make sure it stays full.
Yeah. And I'm just like, how, I feel like 2 or 3 times filling the reservoir, like it's not that far. It's not that much fluid even, right? That it would go through there. I don't know. I guess again, I was just looking to see if there's any additional knowledge.
Well, add a third person who's going to be watching the reservoir, and every time you pump, make sure they add fluid so you never suck air back in.
Yeah,
So
no,
you're bleeding, she's pushing, and someone else is watching the reservoir.
yeah. I had the full experience. I ran out of air. I mean, I ran out of, yeah, I'm just, I'll try it again. I'm just trying to, at this point, I need to seek professional help because it's not, it's just not something that seems like it's getting any better. And I expected that with disc brakes all around, maybe you get halfway down and it should lock up. I mean, you shouldn't be able to push all the way to the floor, like really push the floor. And so I don't know. I don't even know where I didn't do something called bench bleeding. Like do you bench bleed the master cylinder before I swapped it out? Everything.
Yeah, that's getting air out of the actual master so you don't have a trap bubble in there. But nowadays, you're even getting master cylinders brand new, and we bench bleed every brand new one before we get in here. And 1 out of 3 don't even bench bleed. They're getting packed back up and going back to Moss is going, this thing's bypassing. I can't even get to do bench bleed. So don't want to bust a bubble, but I've even got brand new master cylinders out of the box that don't even bleed, bench bleeding them. It's the high quality parts from China.
Yeah, and I'm sure this was one of those because it cost me all like $65. So okay.
So this is a dual master cylinder, Alan?
Yeah.
And what was it? What's it from?
I don't know, brand new. It was, it was a brand new one that was supposed to go into, I think the next model year. This is 67. I think the 68 had the dual circuits, right?
Okay.
So I just bought a 68 and it went in. So actually, first off, maybe that's my problem is that, it could be an air bubble stuck in the top part of that master cylinder that I'll never be able to bleed out kind of thing.
It sounds like it's a possibility. I haven't experienced that, Alan.
Okay.
I've had success by making a cap that fits on top of the reservoir that's pushing into the cylinder, and either use a hose or I blow in it. Open up a line and I blow fluid. So I can't use compressed air because you blow out a seal, but bicycle pump and I've been able to get that bubble out. And that was when I finally went, I'm bench bleeding everyone before I put it in again because I had a trap bubble in the cylinder.
Okay. All right. So and I got to get this fixed, right? I can't really run around with this pumping the brakes like this, right? It's a bad plan.
No, it's true. I mean, you got to be in a position where you can, again, you always get your emergency brake, but you want to get that, you need to get that air out of the lines.
Oh, what a project. Okay. That's been the worst one. Flipping this, changing the seats over with Miata seats is nowhere near as hard as all this. Okay. So, when I changed I pulled the axles apart and fluid came out. So I gotta fill that back. What do they call it? The basketball or whatever.
The diff.
The back transactional. Is there any tips for filling that thing?
You can get a pump to pump it in.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, because you can't unless you take your gas tank out, you can't get it going all that well. So you can take a pump and you can pump it in. That's probably the best way. You put your finger inside the back of the differential to see the fluid level. Once it starts to leak out, that's when you know it's full.
Okay. So is this a Harbor Freight thing? You get a pump? It's a Harbor Freight like kind
of Advanced Auto or any place has got a pump.
Okay.
They're cheap, $10.
And it'll last one time. That's all you need.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Although, don't they have some flexible containers now that you can use that makes it easier to get up in there to fill that differential?
I bought the can, two bottles of it, and it's got a nipple, it's got a
the plastic one. I mean, you can get them folded up, and it is easier with a pump, but you can use. You're not going to get it all out because you're at an angle That's gonna, because the gas tank's in the way, you can't get it to an angle to go in there properly. So you gotta squeeze the hell out of it.
Okay.
You won't get all the fluid out of one bottle. So how much did you lose? Did you drain the whole differential, or did you just get the leaking out of the axles when you remove the axles?
Yeah, just the link, when you pull them out,
Oh.
it leaked. It
You
leaked
didn't
some.
lose much.
No, I don't think so. I mean, somebody else, I think they took it off, and I had somebody look at the car, and I don't know what he did, but I just figured to top it off.
Okay, that's not bad. Okay, I thought you drained the diff. My bad.
Yeah.
I got a pump, Alan. I got a pump you can borrow.
Okay. I mean, okay. That sounds great. It's very exciting, guys. Oh, and I meant to say, somebody was talking about LED lights for the dashboards. So this car has got every light on it is now LED, right? Except for the 2 directional lights on the dashboard. But those LED lights are awesome. So I got them, on eBay. They even came with the, the little, they call them, I don't know, tab lights. And it lights up the gauges like awesome. You can see. You could barely see at night, and now with the LED lights, it's like, it's perfect.
And you're young. Think about the rest of us there.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. But
We have to go spend $20,000 on cataract surgery and new lenses to see our gauges. All you did was spend $40 on LED lamp bulbs. Damn.
Stop bragging. But I'd recommend it. I mean, somebody was talking about that they wanted to do that. It was an easy changeover, and they fit right in. And I mean, granted, my flashing unit is now an LED, is LED aware, and it's got a little dial on it, so you can, because it thinks hyper flash when you first change the lights over. You guys probably don't know this stuff, but that like I said, it's bright. The headlights are bright. They got rings on them, right? So you actually see. I look like a Jeep.
Okay, yeah.
One of the
You
new
said you
Jeeps.
did that, yeah.
Yeah, and they say they don't fit, but they fit for it's like, but everything's LED, so it's lighting up like a Christmas tree. Because I kind of feel like I'm riding around in a motorcycle, or smaller, and I just want somebody, I just want the soccer moms to see me before
There you
they
go.
run me over. But
Any other questions tonight?
Yeah, Peter, Ken, I had sent you in a couple.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ken.
The first one is really easy. I've got a BN2. What's recommended for the transmission and overdrive as a fluid?
I use straight 30 weight in mine, Ken.
Okay, is that detergent or
No,
non-detergent?
non-detergent, straight 30 weight.
Okay.
Anyone else have a recommendation other than that?
Just make sure it's a good quality 30 weight non-detergent.
Oh yeah.
Some of those you can get are they're like for a lawnmower and is recycled. I've had people come in and they went, I changed my transmission oil with 30 weight non-detergent, and I pulled the dipstick out and it's foamy like a McDonald's milkshake. And I went, what did you buy? Something I found on Walmart is $1 a quart. Dude, now we got to flush it.
No, I use nothing but AMSOIL. So my other question, it was mentioned earlier, have to do the freeze plugs on my 4-cylinder BN2. And my question is, do you recommend either brass or steel, or doesn't make any difference? And what brand sealant should I use?
So Dave Walsh, you did yours. What did you end up using for freeze plugs?
I used just the standard steel ones. Didn't have any problem putting them in. I noticed that the lower ones were brass, the big ones on the bottom. I only changed the top 3 ones. Didn't have any problems with it, but I mean, that's going to be in there forever, long after I'm gone. I don't have any problem. I did exactly what you and Mike had suggested: wire wheeled the thing out, and I used pipe dope or thread sealant and smacked them in there with a socket, and everything went together very well. And I've been running around quite a bit lately, and it's no leaks whatsoever. Been going good. Just note, I did have one question, but I'll take it after you're all through there.
Okay, so you said you wire wheeled the where the plug went in the block.
In the block.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got some wire wheels, very small, less like an inch or less, something very small. And I had a cordless drill and I managed to get it in there, get all the way around 360.
Yeah. Well, the BN or the 4 cylinders, they use 2 different sizes, a 1 5/8 and a 1 5/16. So.
Yeah. I also took a mirror down in there to make sure the top part, which you really can't see, was clean and there's no Permatex or anything up in there.
Yeah. Okay. And I assume you use the cup type and not the domed ones.
Yeah, the cup type. I guess that's what.
Yeah.
I wish I had one here to show you, but it's out in the garage. But they
Yeah.
went very well together. Everything was, there's no corrosion or anything too badly damaged. I really looked at the condition of the metal around it, and you might want to do that, and maybe put some epoxy in there or something if it's really corroded out.
Yeah. Okay. And then Peter, the last thing, I don't know if you want to bring it up maybe next month, but about the original sales sheet that I found.
Yeah.
BK8.
Yeah, I mean, so Ken had a car that did, and we've shared it with Steve Byers. So Steve, it was pretty cool looking at that original sales, and we're trying to find the current owner of the car. So Steve Byers is going through the BJ8 registry. He's now up to 55% of the BJ8s ever produced is now in his database. So he's seeing if we can find who the original owner is, or the current owner of the car is right now. Hopefully we'll be able to be successful with that, Ken.
Yeah, just for you folks still here, I'll make this real short. I bought this BJ8 from the original owner, and he gave me the original sales slip from Latham, New York, which is just outside of Albany. And the car was $3,700 even. New York State sales tax was $47, and he traded in a 65 MGB, and he was allowed $1,350 for it.
Yep.
So those were the days.
Yeah, it's amazing how simple that bill of sale was.
Yeah. And it was
so Dave, you had another question?
Say again?
You had another question, Dave?
Yes, sir. I just a quick one. Hopefully it's quick. I know it's getting late. I was talking to my brother who's into motorcycles, and he says the way to check your compression readings when you're doing the cylinders, because I've been doing it. I've been just taking one out at a time and checking it when the car's running and getting the pressure that way. But he says, no, the best way to do it is do it when the engine's actually not running. Just turn it over and get your reading that way. It gets plenty of air and everything.
That's how I've always done compression tests, with a compression gauge and one plug at a time.
Right, with the car running, right?
No.
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 Pull the core wire.
That's why I've been doing it. Okay.
Nope.
So,
I just you want the car to turn over, let it turn over, 3 or 4 times, but no, the car's not running.
Just take the distributor cap off and run it. Okay.
Or as Alan said, take the coil wire off.
Okay, yeah, that's probably the easiest thing to do. Okay, all right. I know that settles that debate. So I guess I could tell him he was right and I was wrong. So, all right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. And Alan and Hendrix, we really appreciate all the insight that you provided. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And then thank you. So I did share out on the chat group at the website for Alan's business down in North Carolina. Again, I highly recommend it. I've used Alan on 3 different of my cars, 4 of cars, a BN4, my BN1, one of my Sprites, as well as my BJ8. So over the years, over the past 20 years, I've used Alan services 4 or 5 different times. So always a good guy to work with. So thank you. And just to remind everyone, those who are interested, we have our planning meeting, which is going to be this Saturday at 10 o'clock. All the details are out on our website. So planning our events for 2022. Our next call will be on April 11th, same time, same bat channel as they say. And thank you all. And again, we'll get this out on YouTube, excuse me. So you'll be able to, if you need to go back to get any of the information regarding that. So thank you all. Have a good night. And hopefully with the weather improving, we'll be able to get out and driving our cars. So.
Well, thank you, Peter. I enjoyed being invited.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you all. Good night.
Thanks, Peter.
Bye-bye.
Good night.